Okay. Again, I want to introduce myself, Jose Romero, West Orange Public Library. I am Adult Services Outreach Librarian. I forgot to put my recording on, that's why, so I apologize. But the book that I want to do a book talk today is called South to Freedom, Runaway Slaves to Mexico and the Road to the Civil War by Alice Baumgartner. This book was written late last year, and I saw it in the New York Times bestsellers list, and I thought it was worthwhile reading the book. Um, um, I usually wait to the last minute to read a book. Not last minute, but I started about a week and a half ago, and I, you know, she does an excellent job in terms of giving any type of statistics in this particular book. She does a real thorough job, and she has lots of pages, lots of notes where you can go back and try to read the information she used on the book. Um, Now, my thing is my relationship with the Hispanic community, but also African American community, and how close we really are. And this book really does the job in terms of looking at that particular situation, not situation also, but maybe that's not a good word to use, but it really gives a good understanding on how the relationship between black and brown have developed in the last 2 centuries. Um, I'd like to start off with one of my favorite quotes in the book, and it's a short quote, and it has to start with property rights. Um, African Americans, during the Declaration of Independence, it says all men are created equal. Um, but as we all know, that wasn't the case. African Americans were treated like property. And throughout the whole entire book, it's a fight with not only the South and the North, but it also has to do with Spain. It has to do with Mexico. It has to do with some outside forces like Great Britain and France, um, and trying to interject their power and their position on this matter. If anybody has any questions, you can put it on the chat, and after the book talk, I can go over it. So another quote that I particularly like, and it resonates throughout the whole book, is the principle of non-intervention or principle of non-interference. Now, what you see is in the South, before the Louisiana Purchase, is that Southern states, um, again, they were a little bit nervous about where and how far slavery can go to other states. Southern states did not want to lose their property, and the property was African Americans. Now, they needed labor. There was always labor shortages um, in the South because there just wasn't enough slaves that they can bring in. And when they got close to the Sabine River, which is in out in Louisiana, that's when compromises would begin, because the spread of slavery was not something that the North wanted to have. But um, what you see is that um, slaves particularly would want to go to Florida was one case. Back in 1818, you would see a lot of slaves go to Florida because Florida was being occupied by Spain, and Spain had anti-slavery laws. So you would see slaves move towards Florida, and property owners would be upset. They would ask the Spanish government to bring the slaves back to them. That did not work well. What happened was is that we conquered, or we threw out the Spaniards, and then Florida became a possession at that point, and then became a state in the United States. So the balance of states of the North and the South were always at the forefront. Now you have Mexico. Mexico at one point had Texas was always a state that a lot of, like she says in the book, she actually says Norte Americanos, that means North Americans, were coming into Texas. Now, Spain had situations where it didn't have a big enough army. It didn't have enough people to be able to go out to the frontier, like New Mexico, Arizona, and California. And also in a time period of say 5 to 10 years, the Mexican government had literally about maybe 30, 40 new presidents. So there was always issues with Mexico being able to control its territory because it just didn't have the resources or the money. So what you see is Mexico always trying to play it safe with the United States, but it had these issues with slaves that wanted to come to Mexico, and Mexico, not somehow, but it it presented uh, um, legislation to change the wording on slavery to omit it, but at certain points it could not. It didn't have the power. So it was always playing cat and mouse with the United States until the war, the Mexican War. But before the Mexican War, you have Texas. Texas at that point became it became a possession. It was free. It battled with Mexico, and the Mexicans lost. So Texas was in play. Does it become a slave state, or does it become a non-slave state? So you see a lot of presidents during this period, which he mentioned, and they all have this question of what do we do? How do we keep the union together and not fall apart? So you have Andrew Jackson, you had Van Buren, you have Tyler, all with the question of what do we do about preserving the union. But again, Southern states would say, well, you know, uh, we need we need the labor. Without the labor, um, things would fall apart. Again, South was mainly cotton, what they grew, and cotton exploded once the gin mill came into play. So they wanted to expand, move into Texas, move into some of these other possessions which we held after we defeated Mexico. But with cotton, it you can grow cotton 2 or 3 years on the same soil, but it after a while you just can't do it. The soil deteriorates. So that's why the South was always looking to expand further into the new possessions that the United States required. Um, there's also some great compromises that happened between the North and the South before Civil War broke out. Um, and you also have the Mexican government that Um, Within their own country, certain states didn't agree with Mexico City. Um, and that's because of the infighting that would happen. I mean, some of the some of the um, not people, but some of the statesmen from DC would go to Mexico City, and one of the first things they would say is that it's a gorgeous city. It was very metropolis at that point. It basically had everything. And then we have some characters in Mexico like Santa Anna, um, the, the the leader of the Mexican army that defeated the Alamo. So you have him coming back, and then you have other plays like Great Britain wanting to get in, or and then also you have France. You have Cuba in play here also. Back in 1853, there was talk of you know conquering Cuba because of its African slaves. So I feel that the book really does justice to the relationship to on all these groups here. The African Americans, wanting freedom so bad, going to Mexico, not being able to speak the language first. The food was different. Uh, it wasn't like there was statistic wise, there really ain't, strong evidence like she suggests to say how many went to Mexico, but they were a substantial amount of people that just wanted to leave uh, everything behind and start a new life. But you also see that Mexico is really in a bind because they're not a slave country, but the slave owners would always go to the viceroy or the person in charge to be able to get their slaves back. So it's a real dilemma for the Mexican country, because not only do they lose all north of the Rio Grande, they lose all those possessions, but they still try to maintain that they're not a slave country. So I really think that this book uh, really gets into a lot of things between all these groups. I, I'm looking for a better word, but it's not coming to me. But you have everybody here who's really passionate about keeping what they have with them, and this book does it. Um, Let me see. The uh, one example, another in terms of quotation, the annexation of Mexican territories threatened to destroy the political power of the slave states. And that's what it comes down to in Mexico. It's just that, there's infighting, wanting to move along and keep the economy going of the South. Um, and so I would suggest, if you're looking for a particular book that really defines the situation back in the 19th century, from 1800 to all the way up to let's say 1950. This book really does a good job of trying to look at this particular situation and make sense of it, especially now in these times where you see border crossings and you see the number of people that are coming over the border. Uh, how did it all start? Where did it all come from? Um, you know, Mexico being a weak government at that time, and not, it passed a lot of laws, But again, it just didn't have the numbers in the military to be able to stand by what they wrote in their constitution. So I like the book. You know, again, I would, if anybody's interested in the book, we have a copy at the library. This is probably the copy you might want to borrow, but I found it a great read. I really did. And you know, I ask everybody if they'd like to read it, you can. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask me at this point. Lily, do we have a question? Let's see.
No,
Everybody.
not really. I don't have a question.
Not yet.
Do you have a question? No, my husband is here too. He doesn't have one.
Not yet.
All right, Dottie does have a question. I can't hear you.
Yes, unmute.
Yep. You heard us, right?
Oh, I unmuted.
Yeah.
Alex.
Not communicating.
Colleen.
Wait.
What's her name? Who's coming?
Colleen.
I wonder if they're on mute.
He can unmute.
Alex. Alejandro, is he there? Seems like he's not. Well, anyway, again, I want to thank everybody. That is my my book talk for today. If you have any questions, please feel free to send me at jromero@westOrangeLibrary.org. I will answer any questions you might have after the program.
Usually it's 45 minutes.
But next month, I'm doing another book talk on Dominicana. It's a book that I gave my niece last year, and I don't know if she read it, but it's a story of a girl that comes to Dominican Republic and has to marry somebody. And it's all, you know, her involvement in growing up here in the United States. She's kind of young and he's kind of old, but it's a really interesting story for next month. So I thank everybody for coming.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
You.
And we'll see you soon, everybody.
Okay, bye-bye.